everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are on episode 3 of the director's cut of ReZero, and I'm excited because after today, and this episode, I can watch the OP for the director's cut until I can't, until it changes for a while, and also, we're going to be diving into a new episode, and I have comments from Patreon for episode 1 that I can talk to you all about, so I'm pretty excited. The last 2 episodes were great. They definitely cemented that Suburu is going to be an interesting protagonist to follow, and that things are just maybe not going to go his way, and we're going to have to deal with that. So, and then we got to meet Reinhard, who is interesting indeed, and we got to find out that our mysterious white-haired half-elven woman is Emilia. So we're supposed to be going to Emilia's house, so that's going to be interesting. So we're looking at the director's cut for episode 3, and after I react to it, I will be watching the episodes 4 and 5 off screen before we come back and discuss. Oh, and we have 2 chibis to react to immediately following the director's cut of episode 3 that are from the director's cut Blu-ray, so I'm excited about that. But before we dive in, don't forget to obviously do the things on YouTube, like and subscribe, all that jazz there. But also to support me and go check out Patreon if you haven't already, or if you're watching from Patreon, thank you. I appreciate it. So let's talk about these comments, because y'all had some pretty good ones, especially over on Patreon. I haven't seen the YouTube comments for episode 1 yet. I'm so grateful to the mods. The mods have done an amazing job checking this week and being really super quick and being like, yep, everybody's good. Also, they said there were no spoilers except for like 1 random comment. So those of you that didn't spoil, good on you. Good job. So with that being said, Kirsten H. for episode 1 said, an isekai, I've been talking about this isekai, saying an isekai is a story at its base where the main character gets transported to another world, and the means vary depending upon the story. So death can occur, which I think is a conventional way of doing it, since these stories all deal with a metaphorical rebirth, so to speak, and that's a very literal way to show it. Also, a character does not have to necessarily replace anyone or take over a body, but that does often happen again and go hand in hand with the whole rebirth and transformation. Basically, if your main character is in one world and then boom, suddenly in another world, you have yourself an isekai. And it's good to have that kind of clarification, because like I said, I'm watching another isekai right now on the channel, basically, and then I've watched an isekai in the past, and they both have done things differently, so it's good to know that it's a pretty broad genre. Speaking of which, James Long for episode 1 says, I initially went into ReZero without knowing too much at all. I can't even remember if I went in knowing it was an isekai, but what stood out to me right away is that it feels like it's commenting on the genre, and it's doing a lot through the main character. Suburu immediately has a lot of assumptions based on his knowledge from our world regarding these kinds of stories, and thinks the world will bend to accommodate him. And then it doesn't. I enjoyed this sort of meta commentary and found it quite funny. Yeah, somebody else was talking about how they're not exactly sure on if they like the whole, like, one of them said, I like when fantasy stories just start out as fantasy and it's not like somebody from a different world coming into the fantasy. And I totally respect that. That's a valid opinion. But I do kind of appreciate that Suburu comes into this being like, oh, I've played the games. I know how D&D works. I've got this. And then immediately falls on his face, which makes it it's good to know that the protagonist doesn't exactly have the same kind of plot armor that you think he does. That makes her more engaging story to me. Kotaro 1483 says, a lot of isekai make their protagonists blank slates, so the audience can project their escapism fantasy upon them, and I think that's a big reason why Suburu stands out as a protagonist. I would argue it's not just isekai that make protagonists a blank slate. I think a lot of shonen anime make their protagonist a blank slate so that the audience can project themselves upon him. I mean, I'm just saying, I've grown up watching some shonen anime, and some of you may all agree, where the main character is not your favorite because you're like, they're okay. It's like the side characters that have a lot more engaging personas and characterization. But yeah, I can definitely see that. So I like Suburu a lot. He's a cool first, for a protagonist, he's a cool character. I like Suburu so far. And then finally, as I throw this toy to my dog, because not that I've been playing with him before we're sitting down to record this with you all, but he's a corgi and he wants to hog the spotlight. Gus N pointed out that Puck's name is in a lot of different media and is usually inspired by folklore, and even included this Wikipedia article link that I want to check out real quick before we begin. So basically, Puck is a character in A Midsummer Night's Dream. I do know that from Shakespeare. As an English major, you can't escape Shakespeare. There's no way. But yeah, so the etymology of puck is uncertain. The present-day English word is already from Old English as puka. Its similar words have been attested to Old Norse, such as puki, or Old Swedish puk, or Icelandic puki, Frisian. But basically, a lot of Celtic languages all kind of associate together. Also, it is known as Goodfellows. Puck is known as a Goodfellow or a demon or fairy that could be a little spirit. So basically, Berserk kind of drew from this as well. So Puck being named, it's kind of like a dog being named Dog is essentially what it is. We've named this fairy spirit Puck, which essentially kind of translates to that as well. So there's a whole article about it, but it is cool to kind of note that it is tied to mythology, and I think that that's pretty neat, even going back to the 1500s. So awesome, nice. And there's a lot of modern day 21st century uses of puck, as well as in the 20th century, such as Berserk. Yeah, and a lot of others as well. So go check out that article, the comments on Patreon, if you want to check that one out and see the link. But thank you. I appreciate learning all of this about the series as we go. So I'm excited. We're starting a new kind of arc with Suburu now that we're over the initial, you now know how the story starts. And so I'm really curious to see what Emilia's house and setup is going to be like. So I guess we should just get started. Okay, here we go. We are going to start ReZero, the Director's Cut, episode 3. And we are going to skip the OP this time around, but after today, starting episode 4, we'll be able to see it. And we're going to start this all here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Oh no! Okay. So I realized that this one side of Whiteboard Coon still had the timelines 1, 2, and 3 up here, and I was like, well, we might as well just leave them. Because I feel like we're gonna be maybe in ReZero, maybe 4th time's a charm, because we're what? We were on were we on the second timeline? Okay, or were we on the 3rd? We're gonna go through it. Maybe I don't know. Considering that in the ED, we only have like Rim and Ram and all that. We don't have any other new characters that haven't been discovered yet. Now, this could be a total thing, like they get you halfway through the EDs and then they're going to switch it. So I'm not going to say that we're not going to be stuck in this particular time loop for the rest of the season. We could. That would be weird. But like, I'm going to be curious. I'm going to be curious to see like if our boy needs 3 or 4 times to get through each of the time loops before he figures it out, or does what needs to be done to advance to the next stage. That's really curious. So somebody killed him in the middle of the night the first time around. Somebody killed him in the middle of the night, and the second time around something happened that caused him to die. Although I wonder what made him sick, if that was part of the powers of whatever it was. We're gonna talk about it and lay out some options and go that way with it. But the mysteriousness of this series and what causes certain things to happen is fascinating to me. I have lots of theories. They're probably going to be wrong, but we're going to talk about them in this episode and lay them out on Whiteboard Coon, and then we'll see next week if any of them hold true or not. I have some thoughts about who characters could be and what's at play here, but and Suburu. I have to constantly tell myself, Subaru is an 18-year-old. His brain is not fully done cooking yet. He's got a lot to learn. And you would think he'd learn the first time around that things aren't going to go the way he thinks they will through Elsa and that means, but he's 18. People who fail to look into history are doomed to repeat it, and so we're just gonna dive into that. The Chibis are really cute. I watched the Chibis in reverse order. I chose the 5th one instead of the 4th one to watch first, which, can we just go ahead and talk about ROSWAAL's voice actor? Can we just get that out of the way right off the bat? It is the one, the only Takehito Koyasu. And I was like, as soon as I heard that voice, I was like, Koyasu, yes! There are some voice actors, like, for example, I'm just going to say one of his more iconic roles, Gojo's voice actor. I am absolute garbage at recognizing his voice. His voice is iconic. I am garbage at recognizing it. I fail to recognize it most of the time. Although last week I was like, hey, we're getting it done. Which is hilarious. We have Koyasu here too. But yeah, I was like, Koyasu, that voice is kind of like Suda. Once you hear it, you're just like, oh, I know exactly who that is. And I was like, yes, please. So yeah, Koyasu, you've probably recognized him from other series like Attack on Titan. He has a role in Jujutsu Kaisen, Revolutionary Girl Utena. You've probably recognized him in a few series before. Yeah, Koyasu is one of my favorites. His voice is just, it exudes diva. It exudes like just extravagant, over the top, especially when he's playing a villain. Over the top villainy. I'm just like, yes, it just oozes charisma. And I'm like, oh, I love it. And I feel like he's going to be a villain in this series too. I mean, maybe he is innocently with Ram spying upon Suburu thinking that he's a spy. Maybe quite innocently, but girl, he showed up looking like my Otismon. I'm like, bitch, no. And like the little devil tail. And then we have the two maids that have like the shining thing going on. And I'm like, are they demons? Because we've kind of established that there are other races in this series, such as elves and there's dog people walking around. I'm like, yeah. I think they're demons. I think all three of them are. I think that Rim and Ram are like little succubi. They're little maid succubi. I think that they're, especially the way that Rim reacted to what Suburu said to her walking back from the village. And I think that old ROSWAAL is a demon as well. But we could be wrong. I'm ready to be corrected by the show as we get into it. But those are parts of my theories right now. So the chibis were really cute. I appreciate that. I also appreciate the fact that they're teaching him to read and write in the language we talked about in the Chibi series last week, time and how time functions. So I thought that was pretty cool here. But yeah, the happy ROSWAAL mansion family. And Emilia's part of that. Maybe Emilia's half demon. Maybe she's half elf, half demon, and she struggles with that. And that's why she's a little bit afraid of how the village will receive her. Who knows? We don't know her other half. She doesn't really want to talk about the other half, as it were. But yeah, let's dive into this episode because there's quite a bit to talk about with it, and I'm tired of stalling. So anyway, here in 3, 2, 1, we start out easy enough. We're going to be going through these timelines and just mapping out. I don't know that ceiling. That was such a great moment, not only for the Neon Genesis Evangelion reference, but it's not only funny for that, it's that he's like, I don't know that ceiling, and then it cuts to when he gets revived, he's like, I know that ceiling, and it's like, yeah, so he is on his third. Oh, crap, yeah, yes, he does start over again. Okay, we're gonna backtrack into that, but it was just a really funny reference, and I thought that it was really well done. So yeah, so Emilia has healed him. And I do like the fact that we kind of established that, Subaru's he's not like ripped, like some late 90s, early 2000s shonen protagonist, but he's athletic enough. It seems I got out of using this return by death this time. Well, that's going to be a very short-lived phrase. I'm just going to go ahead and say, I love the blue lanterns, but blue light gives me such a migraine. Like, I did feel like I was even starting to get a headache watching this, being like, oh, I hate the blue light. But it is a cool aesthetic. Looks a little ghostly, maybe a little demonic. We'll see. Yeah. And so he expects that there's going to be the stereotypical, like, the girl by his side, like, are you awake? And being there the whole time, which I do appreciate that in some regards, the women in this series are not meeting up to his stereotypical standards. I'm not gonna lie, I told you all from the beginning I'm keeping it 100. There's a few parts of this that I was kind of like, side-eyeing it a little bit. There are some tropes with some Japanese shonen and things I've seen through the fandoms that I'm like, okay, I'm a little too old for that trope. Or I don't want to be ageist and say I'm a little too old, because that's implying that people that are young are tolerant of it. But there's some things that I was just like, oh, that's kind of, and it's not dated. This series came out 6 years ago, but there's stuff that I'm like, can we be past that, please? And I'll tell you when we get to him. But I was just like, okay. It doesn't make Suburu seem as empathetic or sympathetic when he's like that, but whatever. Anyway, that's just from my perspective. I was wondering, this like picture here, whenever they're walking back from the village, him and Rim, and they're like walking past the bridge and everything. I immediately thought of this picture because it seemed like it was similar to where they were walking, like it was just a scenery shot. So as I throw this to my dog, who's brought me this toy to throw, I was like, oh, that's interesting. I'm like, did we go there? Or it just felt like a relevant painting. And I was like, is this going to be something that pops up later on or is relevant to the story? It has that air to it. I don't know if that will happen or not, but it also, maybe it's just a sign that the timeline was looping. Maybe it's just a sign of that. I don't know. But yeah, so he adequately predicts that if he goes to this door, he'll find the goal. And here we are with Betty, aka Beatrice, aka Keeper of the Librarian. So let's get some of our new characters up here. So we have Beatrice, aka Betty. We have her, and she is a librarian. Possibly a non-human. We don't really establish what she is or, what race she is, species, whatever. We don't really establish that. He suggests she's not human. So I'm like, is she a robot? Is she a demon? Is she a ghost? What is she? We don't know. But she is in charge of the forbidden books. And basically keeping a hold of that for ROSWAAL and the family so that people don't get into anything that they shouldn't. So, look, I don't know if this is the little crown on her head, the spiral pigtails, the coat, the lace, the striped tights. I know that One Piece came out before this series. Her entire design is based off Perona. You cannot tell me otherwise, unless Perona is also based on something even before that. But I'm anticipating that this is based off Perona. And I love Perona. She's one of my favorites in One Piece. So I was like, interesting. But I thought her design, she also kind of looks like a character from Hunter x Hunter, which has not shown up yet on the series as I'm reacting to it. But she has a biscuit quality, let's say that. But yeah, I thought Beatrice really is intriguing to me. So yeah, she's like, this is profoundly aggravating. What a profoundly aggravating man you are. And you would think, again, I'm giving Suburu a little bit of grace because he's 18, but I'm like, you would think that he would have learned his lesson a little bit from the first couple episodes, but I have a feeling he ain't gonna learn his lesson for a little bit until he's gone through this cycle. I'm like, dude, how much are you gonna have to suffer before you learn your lesson? How much is that gonna happen? Because you would think the first thing you do when you find someone, don't call him an NPC, don't point at him, and don't freaking go where you're not. Don't tell her to smile. Have you not learned anything? It's like, oh. And there are little things that Suburu does in this episode towards the female characters of the show that make my eye twitch a little bit and make me want to become Beatrice and zap him into the next dimension. And I like Suburu, don't get me wrong. And it makes me a little irked because it is the writer who has wrote these traits for him. So I'm more mad at the writer than I am the character themselves. But when he's like, come on, smile, have we learned nothing from 2016? Have we learned nothing? Women do not want to be told to smile. There is a social and psychological aspect of that. I'm not going to get into it with y'all, but as an educator, as someone who's studied feminist and gender studies, I'm like, no, stop it, please. Please stop. We don't tell boys to smile, so stop telling girls to smile. We don't like it. So yeah, I don't blame her for zapping him into the next dimension. I'm like, please. So yeah. I can understand why game masters would want me in all the events. I wish that Suburu sometimes would just be himself. Because when he's himself, like, there is something to say about a little bit of toxic masculinity in this series that I'm already noticing. And I don't know if it is intentional from the writers. I don't want spoilers as to where his character arc is going to go. But when Suburu is just himself, and he's a romantic. Like, when he's a romantic and he's talking about the moon and planning this date and he wants to take her to the field of flowers. And when he's planning all this out and being a genuinely romantic person and this kind-hearted individual, he's very, very loving and he's very likable. And you immediately want to root for him and fall for him. And I'm like, yes, absolutely. And there's a protective element to that too. And I feel like those traits are so great. It's when he puts on this mask of toxic masculinity traits that he gets punished. for them, but also that he gets punished, but also that he looks the worst. Like, he's the least likable when he puts on these toxic masculine traits. And I would like to give the series the benefit of the doubt and assume that that's the point. They're showing, like, when he's fake and putting on this front of, like, being like the suave macho character, and then it falls flat on his face. I'm like, that's the point. He should just be himself. And if, you know, he was himself and his little adorable romantic self, then that'd be fine. But yeah, but when he puts on this air of superiority, it backfires on him so bad. Because she's like, this is Betty's multi-purpose room, which is a library and a bedroom. And I've had just about enough. And then little do you know that Betty's hands are tasers. And not just any tasers. Tasers that gonna kill you. So, timeline 1. With our boy. Timeline 1 is that Suburu wakes up. He wakes up and there is no one there. There's no one there when he wakes up. And then he finds Betty. He makes Betty mad, which is what you should not do. And then Betty kills him. Because she's like, and we're done. So there was a moment that I was like, does Betty have a reading steiner? Does Betty have the ability to sense that he's been through multiple timelines? That would be rather curious. It almost seemed like she did. And I was like, does she have the ability to sense him being someone that's repeating a timeline? And if there are characters in this world that can do that, that would be very interesting. So I don't know if that's true or not, but in any case, she's like, and bye. I've confirmed you're not an enemy. I don't mean your personality. It took you long enough to notice. So yeah, do not measure a proud, noble being by your standards, human. So she said a proud, noble being. So I don't know. She's not an elf. So I don't know if she is an automation or if she's just like a spirit. Maybe we'll find out. But I love that. I know that ceiling. That's such a good callback. That's great. So yeah. And so, what does he say there? He says, I woke up earlier. No, this makes the third. What a debut. Okay, wait. So he said this was the third time waking up? Not the first, not the second, but the third? So have we had multiple timelines already happen? I don't know if I want to say that that's been the case, but we're just gonna, maybe he didn't die and maybe he just got sent back there after she zapped him and they just sent him back and he was going to wake up again. We're gonna let that hang in the air, right? We're gonna let that hang in the air. That if this is the third, we're gonna say timeline 2, or is it timeline 3? We'll just put a little question mark there. I'm not exactly sure on that one. Okay. But anyway, we meet Ram and Rim. I'm glad we got Ram's name because for a while when she just kept saying sister, I was getting a little bit like, are we ever going to find out her name, or is that going to be like a significant plot point of Ram and Rim? Okay, love the designs. It's giving Ouran High School Host Club. I love the blue and the red Minun and Plessel style. I love that they have the bangs that like you see each of their individual eyes, but they still have like this two like purple magenta bows. Those little daisies on top of their heads, everything. I want to make note, and this is the subtlest little thing, and I only notice it because because their outfits exaggerate it, but Rim's boobs are bigger than Ram's boobs. There, I said it. It's been driving me crazy this whole time because they're not identical. Like, Ram is not as endowed as Rim. Just putting it out there. Just pointing it out. You can see it on the screen. It's a very tiny, subtle detail, but I noticed it because when they were talking about Ram being not quite as good as Rim, and Rim doing everything to make up for her, I was like, oh, that's interesting. And that's before they revealed Ram's name. So it almost felt like she wasn't even worthy of a name compared to Rim. So that was interesting. But yeah, so these two maids in our maid cosplay fantasy. And look, I know Japan has a big old thing about maid culture, a maid cafe. I tried to convince my brother to go to a maid cafe when we were at the convention, and he's like, I'm not perverted. I'm like, they're not for perverts. And he was just like, mm-mm. So, but yeah, I don't quite get the maid culture thing. It's not my cultural thing to get. I'm not mad at it. It makes me think of Black Butler, to be honest. But yeah, you're experiencing the ultimate shame in the mind of our guest, Rim. Now, okay, I could do without him ever doing this ever again. It makes me think of a character from Steins Gate Zero that I've criticized pretty heavily. My dude. My dude, I thought that Emilia is the love of your life. If she is the love of your life, let's not be trying to oogle other women. It's not becoming of you. It's not very becoming of you. Gentlemen, if you love a woman, oogling other women is not going to be something that woman that you are supposedly in love with is going to look at fondly. I'm sorry. It's just not going to work. So I'm like, yeah, no. Please don't do that. You're both fair prey in my fantasies. I hate that logic so much. I do not like... There is a little bit of messaging in this episode that it's okay for him. And again, I don't think he really believes that, but he puts on this front, and my fear is the fandom will not be able to distinguish this toxic masculinity from his actual character. I would love to give the fandom more benefit of the doubt, but I worry because a lot of isekai that I've heard of have these tropes, and I'm like, I don't know if people can distinguish the trope or not. That's my fear, and this kind of shit becomes normalized in our society, and that's not cool. And that's not good. So I'm kind of like, ugh. The phrase "you're both fair prey" in my fantasies is disgusting. And no, please don't. Please stop. Please be a normal human being. Pretty please. Don't normalize this. It just irks me a lot. And so yeah, then Emilia wakes, and he's like, oh, I was oogling these girls in a maid costume, but now that you're here. Also want to talk about real quick. Someone had commented saying that the costume designers in series 1 and 2 were women, but they were basing it off the light novel designs, which were designed by a man. I've never really gotten the garter belt thing. I get why you have to have them for the tights. I just don't know why she even needs those tights with the garter belts, because she has regular shoes on. So at that point, just wear tights that go all the way up and like cinch around the stomach. I don't know. Again, I'm like, because if you're not trying to sexualize her, because garters are kind of like, there's a connotation in fashion and history of them being more tied to like feminine wiles and things like that. There's a whole history with it. And I'm kind of like, if a woman really designed this in the light novel, then I don't know if she would go with those design aspects. It's just a little thing. We're getting into the semantics, tiny little things, but they're little things I notice. She also always has to have Puck beside her. And so this man was violating my sister. They were shamed by this man. Emilia is very forgiving of Suburu, though, because she knows that he's not really like that. He just is playing into a lot of male stereotypes that unfortunately exist in these worlds. And I appreciate that. I do appreciate that this series is letting Suburu put forth those stereotypes. And then when you actually see his character, he doesn't actually act upon them like he projects. So yeah. I also like the fact that he calls her Emilia Tan, but she doesn't get what the honorific is because it's a different world. I do appreciate that, because although what's interesting is she doesn't get the tan. It's not quite consistent all the way through, because she says she doesn't get the tan part, but then later they say Sama like it's nothing. And I was like, well, if you're trying to say it would be cool if they just dropped the honorifics altogether, because it's a different world, and treated it as a different world that didn't have those honorifics, so that when he says tan, it's odd. And they're like, I don't understand why you say those extra words at the end of them. But then they say Kun and Sama, and I'm like, well, then that kind of takes it out of, I don't know. I'd be curious to see how the English dub handled this scene, to be quite honest. But yeah, so she's like, oh, you saved my life. It would be natural for me to heal your wounds. And he's like, well, it's time to start a new day. This place is enormous. This place is like gigantic, like way too big for just a regular person. Like, how did ROSWAAL get this wealth? How did he get this? Why is Emilia staying with him? I do love my homeland's ancient practice of warm-up exercises. I do love that. That's really funny. So let's go here to timeline 2 before we get more into this. S wakes up, and we have Ram and Rim are there, and Emilia comes in and is there. And then we have the stretches. that he does outside with her. I thought that was super cute. I loved the warm-up exercises where he explains to her, like, stretching in the morning. I thought that was adorable. And him getting her to do it alongside him. And I'm going to give the show a big old benefit of the doubt. I was wrong when he was like, oh, you just jump up and down. For a hot second, I thought he was getting her to jump up and down so that her boobs would bounce. And I thought it was going to be this really fan servicey thing. And then they didn't do it. And I was like, good job, show. I was like, it's sad that I have to have that expectation, but good job. So yeah, I thought this was really cute. And then Betty's like, what the fudge? And yeah, the victory, like, this was adorable. And then Puck comes out. I don't exactly know what the purpose is of him choosing with Puck to, like, cuddle Puck, unless it's just the fact that it's just him establishing that his character is into that sort of thing. Like, I don't know if there's going to be, like, something down the road tied to this, but it happens in the next timeline. So yeah, Puck basically gets pet by Suburu. That's his reward. And I don't know if it's to show Emilia that he's not someone that's greedy. He's not someone that's power hungry. He's not someone that's going to take advantage of her. Because honestly, you know, Emilia saved his life. He saved Emilia's life. And Emilia's like, well, I'm indebted to you. And all he wanted was to learn her name, which to her is like, oh, you weren't going to take advantage of me? That's cool. And then Puck's like, well, I'm indebted to you too. And Subaru's like, well, I just want to be able to snuggle with you sometimes. And Emilia's like, okay. So he's not a greedy person. He's not power hungry. Okay, that's interesting. So yeah, I thought that was, I guess that's the only reason why they have that. Also, it's adorable. But yeah, he's like, I know you feel that way since I can somewhat read your mind. And maybe it was Subaru's way of showing to Puck that he's not a bad guy so that Emilia will believe him and trust him. Maybe that was a subtle way of him being able to do that, because Puck tells her, he's like, there's no malice, hostility, or ill intent. And she's like, okay, all right then. Because in the first timeline, back in episode 1, she told him that her name was like the Witch of Envy's name because she didn't trust him. And so now in episode 3, in this timeline, it frustrates me because the things that he did, some of the things that were good don't get repeated. And I'm like, ah. But yeah, he basically is showing her that he is a trustworthy person. So anyway, then the maids come. They say, ROSWAAL Sama has returned. And then, yeah, calling Betty a lolly, which she does look like a little girl. And then Bubby, I love that she calls Puck Bubby, and she's infatuated with him. I'm like, look, you two have common ground. Beatrice and Suburu both want to, like, snuggle with Puck. Okay, we heard at the end of episode 3 here, we heard when Suburu was getting attacked, like, chains. Chains were rattling at the end of the episode. And when this mofo comes in, he's got chains wrapped around his feet. Now, they look like a little bracelet. They look like a little anklet. So maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's not anything crazy, right? But they do show them there. So I'm like, I don't know if that's going to be a sign that, is ROSWAAL the one that killed him? Did he sick Rim or Ram? I don't think Rim would have done it, but I think Ram might have. Did he sick Ram on him to kill him? These are important questions. And maybe it is Ram because she knew the layout of his room. But then at the end of the episode, she lured him out of the room, or he was lured out of the room trying to get help. So we are going to go through the episode and see if there's any more clues. But yeah, so again, Subaru's saying you hired a clown. I'm like, my dude, he is the guy who owns the mansion. ROSWAAL L. Mathers. Marshall Mathers is distant cousin. I mean, right off the bat, the two references that I am seeing, and I know that Skate the Infinity, I believe, did Skate the Infinity come out before this or after this? Anyway, Adam from Skate the Infinity, another Koyasu role. The blue hair reminds me of them, but also Hisoka from Hunter x Hunter. I mean, Hisoka from Hunter x Hunter, by far, just has the David Bowie eyes. That's the main difference. But the clown motif, I do love that earring. I would have that earring in a heart the little upside down heart. Mm-hmm. He looks like my Otismon. I'm calling him being a demon. He's the lord of this castle. How did Emilia get hooked up in this house? We need to know. These are the questions we need to be answering. How did Emilia get here? Why is she here? What is going on? So yeah, see, I do the cooking and the sister does the cleaning. Yeah, I know they're both maids. I know they both work in the house. And the domesticated roles there, you know. I don't know. I always appreciate a butler character in the show, which is essentially what Suburu becomes, because it kind of shakes out that stereotype a little bit. And Suburu does end up doing that, and we find out he sucks at it. But yeah, so I'm very curious, which if you told me, again, because of Koyasu and the roles that he's played, and just from what we know of ROSWAAL's character so far, if you told me that ROSWAAL is kind of this like generic misogynist who's like, you know, uses these two women who are maybe demons, maybe not, to do like the housework and stuff and the traditional women roles, while he's, you know, using them to his advantage, I wouldn't be surprised by that. I'm curious to see what his relationship with Rim and Ram becomes by the end of this arc. I'm curious to know how they're all connected, because they clearly are connected. I mean, especially Ram and him, they're debating on whether Subaru's a spy or not. So yeah. And Suburu is, again, basing his understanding of this world off of stereotypical preconceived notions. But we find out that Rim is pretty good at most things, and Ram is kind of second rate. But Ram is the one that's reporting back to... Again, that's an important note as well. The fact that Ram is reporting back to ROSWAAL and not Rim. Because Rim has established that she's the better person at all the tasks. But again, it's kind of going back to ROSWAAL taking advantage of Ram, because Ram is the lesser of the two sisters in terms of her skill set. So if he's a predator, he can take advantage of that more, because a lot of men that are predatory will target women that seem weak to them because it's a control thing. That seems like it might be the case with ROSWAAL and Ram. Maybe we'll find out more. But anyway, so the mansion of Margrave Mathers. Well, you are not Margrave, so where are they and why are you here? So we have this mansion, the Margrave Mathers mansion. Okay. And then in the kingdom of Lagunica, as it were, Lagunica Beach. Yeah, as he's sitting there dipping his bread in this soup. And he's like, is something bad happening in the country? He's like, well, it's not an agreeable state. I like that Subaru's like, what, you all aren't at war or anything, right? That would be really bad for me right now. And he's like, well, we could be on the verge of it. So he says, Lagunica's king is currently not present. Currently not present is a very precarious way of saying things. So we find out that the king is, quote, not present. Doesn't mean they're dead, just means they're MIA. That almost seems worse. It's not definitive. So, and he's like, there's no need to be concerned. He's like, the kingdom could be on fire in a day, but like, we're not worried about that. Yeah, I would be worried about that. I guess he's like, really? I expected, now that you know my secret, you can't leave here alive sort of thing. Yeah, I don't think that's wrong. He's like, the king and his children are the last of his line. So we find out that his kids are the last of the line. I don't know if any of these children are old enough to rule, because you would think they'd be the ones to take the place of said king. But they're in the process of selecting a new king. So they are selecting a new king. Okay. I guess the children just aren't old enough to rule, and that's why they're not being considered, because usually if it's a monarchy with a king and a queen, if the king is not present, then the child steps up and takes the parent's place. But this seems like a little bit more bureaucratic, so I'm like, maybe the children aren't old enough, so they're like, we need somebody to take over instead. And he's like, okay, so in the king's absence, the royal selection is causing confusion. And he's like, you are now connected to my household by making contact with Emilia. I don't think that ROSWAAL looks like an elf, so I'm curious why Emilia is, you know, connected to him. Someone with higher status would be due respect. She's like, I'm a candidate to become the 42nd ruler. Okay. That makes it sound like that makes it sound like, one, the children aren't old enough to take over from the parent, who's the king, and two, that the king is not necessarily a bloodline, direct monarchy line, that it's chosen. So she's in line to run for that. And the insignia, we find out about the insignia. The insignia is a sign of eligibility. That makes a lot more sense now why Elsa wanted it. Elsa didn't want it for herself. She wanted it for her clients. So apparently whoever has the insignia is in line to be a candidate to become the kingdom's ruler. So if that was stolen from Emilia and given to somebody else, that person could go to wherever they're having these, debates or wherever they're choosing the ruler and could audition as the ruler themselves. That's interesting. I'm curious how many insignia have been handed out. Also, I like Emilia a lot. I think she is smart. I think she's powerful enough, but she seems so naive's not the word I would use, but she seems so soft-hearted and seems kind of trusting and has done some things that I'm like, I don't know if I would put you in charge of a kingdom. I don't know if she's quite at the level I would say, yeah, you could be totally queen. I don't know if I would put her on that pedestal. I mean, she's great. I like Emilia, but I don't know if I would put her up there to become queen. I don't know. I feel like she needs some more time to cook. Yeah. So she's a candidate, though. It's a touchstone for determining one worthy of the throne. But yeah, I think Suburu brings up a good point. He's like, but you almost had this stolen. She's like, well, it was stolen by a thief. And he's like, but if you get it stolen, doesn't that mean you're not worthy to be the ruler? So I think there's a little cause for concern there. I'm curious, but anyway, so Suburu makes this request. And his request is to become a butler at the mansion. I am assuming he is doing this to find out more information, to figure out what's going on, and this place seems, emphasis on the seems, like a safe place to do so. And so they get him the suit, and I want to make note that Emilia is with Rim and Ram to get the suit originally. She's with him when he gets the suit. She's not there the next time around. But yeah, your name is now Blinding Curse. Everything about him is ridiculous. He's like, well, we can't allow you to work here with such a shady-looking attire. So yeah, so they go to altar, and she's like, well, I've got to do some studying. And so then they go to do the measurements for him, which, again, I feel like it's, be secure in your masculinity, Suburu. She's just measuring you. I feel like, again, that says more about him than it does about Rim, because when he offers to take her measurements, there is a sexual implication behind it. That he's like, oh, I get to wrap this around her boobs and her crotch. And it's like, no, just measure her and take the measurements to get the clothing. And she's not being sexual at all. So she's just like, let's just take this measurement and get this over with. So again, it's kind of that perversion that I'm like, Suburu, you're better than that, my dude. You are better than that. So again, this place is like freaking Downton Abbey. It's huge. And the lavatory. And when he goes to the lavatory, he's like, oh, Bubby, your fur is the best. I'm like, girl. And she just randomly has this bed in the library. Such a random moment, but yeah, she's like, get out. And again, he's like, I won't tell a soul. And she's like, get out of here. Quit being weird. So yeah, so she has this thing called door crossing. Beatrice has this thing called door crossing, which allows her to go in between spaces, which is interesting. Interesting indeed. You're like, oh, she's in here. And she's like, yes, that was impressive, Suburu. You picked the right door again. I'm a flag crusher who makes game masters cry. She's like, I don't know who you are. I'd never want to be a sister, I suppose. So yeah. And so, of course, Suburu is like, he's expecting Emilia to give him a tour of the house, but she's studying to become a ruler, my dude. The world is going on without you. And instead, you get Ram and Rim. So, we're going to get to your actual job. And he's like, oh, get to my butler skills. She's like, yep, you're going to do the garden. You're going to help prepare lunch. You're going to do the soot cleaning. You're going to do all this. And so, again, he's like, what does he say there? That I was kind of like, come on, dude. where she knocks on the door. He's like, I won't do anything weird. If you have to tell someone you're not, if somebody knocks on your door and you're like, oh, I won't do anything weird to you, come on in. Then what? Yeah, she says your permission makes you sound less credible. She's like, just say, come on in. So I did think it was hilarious when they were like, we normally take a lot of time to get ROSWAAL's outfits perfect, but, you know, you're just a new guy, so we just, here you go. But it is perfect. So in this one, we get Rim. And with Rim, after she gives him the suit, he takes the time to take the sewing needle. So he takes the sewing needle to fix the pants. And we got to make note of that because it doesn't happen the next time around. He's like, no, I'll do it. And she's like, well, you know, I'll give you full marks for your sewing, but it doesn't seem very useful. And so then he cuts his finger, like, while peeling the potatoes. Yep. You know what? I can't even make fun of Suburu because I'm garbage at peeling potatoes, so I'd be right there with you, my dude. But never put the knife face it away so you don't cut your hand off, my dude. I'm not a good cook, and even I know that. But yeah. So anyway, they clean up the bathroom. They do all the gardening. And so that's when we have ROSWAAL and Ram. I don't like her sitting on his lap. It's kind of creepy. But it seems like Ram likes him, so I don't know. He's asking if Suburu looks like he's a spy. So we have ROSWAAL and Ram. And they're questioning if Suburu is a spy. I don't know. So, I mean, we know he's not a spy, but I don't know why they would think he's a spy. So I'm assuming since Emilia is gunning to be a candidate to be the ruler there, and he has been acting suspicious because he's, you know, the fish out of water, trying to apply the logic of, you know, breaking the fourth wall into this world. I could see why they would think he's suspicious, but Ram is kind of like, no, I think he's just an idiot. I think that Emilia's just got, as Puck would say, poor taste. She says they're both children. She's like, they're just kids. I don't think there's anything the matter. But I don't know if ROSWAAL believes that. But like this part here, when she's like, oh, this must seem really, you know, like, obnoxious and boring to you, and he's like, well, nothing's boring with you, Emilia. Like when he's just his little romantic self and he's really cute, like then I'm like, come on, Suburu, like I really like him when he's like that. And he's like, well, we haven't had the chance to talk the past few days. And so he's like, now, and then of course he's like, I wish I'd be comforted into your arms, your chest, your lap. I'm like, my dude, you're doing so well. You're doing so well. I just feel like if the shoe was on the other foot, would it not make him uncomfortable? I don't know. Stuff like that, like just pressuring people with physical affection, like it makes people uncomfortable sometimes. I don't know. But I'm glad he gets beyond that. And then that's when he says the moon is pretty. And she says it's far beyond our reach. Mm-hmm. And she's like, oh, well, you just asked for my name that one time. And he's like, when I want something, I ask for it, and I want it from the bottom of my heart. And at the time, that's what I wanted. Mm-hmm. And she does respect that. So, I love that she says, you know, you could have just asked if you could be a guest instead of working here so that you could stay here. And he's like, shit, I didn't think about that. I guess, so she brings that up. She's like, just ask to be a guest. Just ask to be a guest instead of a worker. He doesn't listen to her and he redoes the whole thing next time asking to work at the mansion. I'm like, maybe she just gave you the key to getting out of all this. But anyway, it's hard to explain, but this is the proof of the effort I put in. I actually dislike exerting myself. And he's like, it's not so bad learning to do something I hadn't been able to do before. That's the part that makes me sad when he wakes up again, is the fact that he went through all these struggles and he has these scars to prove like the work he's put in. And then when the timeline starts over, they're gone. And I was like, no, you worked so hard for them. That sucks. I hate that. I hate that for him. And these moments here like this where she's like, oh, you're so silly. Like these moments where they bond, it makes me so frustrated because they bond and everything's fine and they're making progress, and then he wakes up and redoes it, but he tries to he's not able, I don't think he's not trying to, but he's not able to reforge those connections he had made in the past the same way again. And that's so frustrating. I'm like, damn it, this poor kid. But yeah. And then like this moment here, what I was trying to say in the episode is that when he puts on this like super serious voice, he kind of sounds like Space Dandy, but he like makes himself like sound like an older, more macho man or whatever. And it ages him instantly. It makes him seem like he's 30 when he's an 18-year-old kid. And I'm like, just be yourself. I want to be like Robin Williams in Aladdin. Be yourself. Yeah. And so, okay, this part here, he's like, oh, I cut this one of the knives in the kitchen. And this from when I went into town in the evening to shop. And what did he say there? I went in the town the evening to shop, and a little animal some kids were playing with bit me. So some of this has already happened. That's crazy. So we are getting, when he repeats the timeline, some of this over again from a different perspective without seeing that, was he planning the date all along, or is that just part of it? So he actually did go to town and get bit and had the kitchen incident. Okay. Interesting. Okay. Yep, hiking and kicking me and wiping the running nose on me. It sucked. But then the next time he kind of like revels in it. Do you want to watch the kids and that small animal? He's like, why? It's not that I don't want to go with you, but it could cause trouble for you. I'm very curious. So Emilia is worried it could cause trouble. I don't know why it would cause trouble for her to be there with him and not when Ram or Rim was with him. But if she is a candidate for the ruler, is she worried about the fact that she's half elf and drawing attention? Is she worrying about that? That's interesting. I don't know. Maybe it's that. She seems like she's bothered at times by being half elf and at other times not. Like when she says, well, I'm just half elf, so I'm not that pretty. And he's like, sure you are. And she's kind of like thrown off by it. I feel like her lineage gives her frustration in ways. And I'm very curious to see what we get out of that. But yeah, he's like, this'll be great. And so then he's like, oh, lolly girl, you stood up. Her name's Betty. She's like, you think you can just break down my door crossing like it's natural? And he's like, can I try that too? And she's like, only Bubby may touch me, I suppose. I'm like, also, I don't quite like that he gets up in her space. I'm like, dude, she killed you before. Did you learn nothing? Like, don't get up in her space. Like, maybe, and call her Lolly. I'm like, maybe if you treated her with a little more respect, she'd be more apt to it. And he does get there eventually. Yeah, he doesn't get there in this timeline. He kind of like, he has a convo with Betty, but I wouldn't describe it as great. So yeah. So then he's like, I've got to figure out where all the good views of the flower fields and stuff are. And he's like, I can't sleep while I'm thinking about this. And so he tries to count pucks. And that's where, for the record, I watched episodes 4 and 5. They are no different from these episodes together. So again, the people that were complaining about the director's cut, I'm like, maybe it'll happen later on, but I'm like, I didn't see any difference. I'm sure maybe in future episodes. In these episodes, nothing is cut out or different. But then he wakes up. He's like, Natsuki Suburu is going to make great strides today. And the two maids are there. Yep. And then he notices the hands. That's such a great way to show that the timeline has changed because the hands don't have the bandages. That's such a good way to show it. Yes. So he's very concerned. He's like, why have I gone back? So somebody killed him in the middle of the night, presumably. And they're like, you seem to have a stomach ache. Okay, that right there. Okay, Ram and Rim brought up that he has a stomach ache. He didn't seem to have a stomach ache, but at the very end of the episode, he had a stomach ache. He had a stomach ache before death. Before he was viciously maimed and his eyeball popped out. Like, the whole episode, I was sitting there being like, man, other than him stabbing himself with a knife a few times, we didn't get that gory. I should have knocked on some wood. because it definitely turned her out. So yeah, they're like, you seem to have a stomach ache. I'm like, oh, I feel like they're like, you don't remember me. He's like, so it's like none of it has happened. And I honestly feel for him in this. He's like, my promise with Emilia. I really did feel for him in this moment because that sucks. Like, he was doing so well. He was actually getting through, making progress with Emilia, and to have to start it all over again without knowing what happened and why, that's so sad. Like, I felt really bad for him. I was like, damn it, Suburu, my dude. But yeah, so he retreats into Betty's library, but then she's like, you're such a rude one. And she says, there was last time and again. How are you breaking my door crossing? And then he's like, wait. He's like, hold on. He's like, you said I broke through your door crossing last time and then now. And he's like, if this is the second time I've woke up in the mansion, then you remember me. And she's like, I'd rather erase her memory. So at this point, it establishes that he was there a prior time. So Betty shows that he was there a prior time. Presumably before this happened. So there's a missing timeline or a missing part of the timeline that we don't know about. And that's crazy to me. What do you mean he's been there before? What do you mean you remembered? What? Where's these missing hours that we've not been shown, friends? The save points changed from the guy with the appas to here. Everything was normal before I fell asleep. He's like, I don't think I was in any situation where I could die. She's like, I wondered what you were muttering about, and all I hear is about living and dying. So yeah, he's like, thanks. He's like, your never-changing attitude has calmed me down. She's like, really? He's like, there's something I want to make sure of, and I'll wait. He says, there's something I want to make sure of, and then he says, I'll wait until after before I get depressed. So yeah, he says, I knew it. But interesting. All right. So, I'm curious. Okay, so she said she talked to him a few hours before, and when he woke up. So this timeline here, there was no one there, and Betty zapped him and everything. So did she take him back to the room, and that's when all of this happened? Curious. Curious indeed. Anyway, so he's back to the beginning with Emilia. And he's like, oh, well, you have your adorable eyes, nose. See, there's parts like this where she's like, is there something on my face? He's like, yeah, your adorable eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. I'm like, all those dad jokes are so cute. But, you know, I mean, when he's romantic and sweet, he's very likable. And I'm like, just keep doing that. Keep being yourself. And he's like, I feel like my mind's been beaten to death with a bat, but otherwise I'm good. And that's when Puck comes out and we run through all of this over again. So he's like, I don't know whose idea of a prank this is, but I'm going to make you all sorry for all of it. After that smile that charmed me, I'm going to keep my promise to Emilia. Yeah, I'm like, Suburu, I hope you can keep your promise, but I don't know. This is going to get crazy, I feel. So he thinks that he can just redo everything from yesterday and nothing's going to change. And quickly finds out that that's not how this works. Because even though it's repeating the day, little factors, like little butterfly effects are happening with everything he does that leads these characters to do other things. Like, for example, in all of this, we don't do the stretches. So he just talks to Emilia. He talks to Emilia, no stretches in that moment. He still has the part about Puck. So the Puck part is the same. But then we have the whole butler bit where he decides to do that. In this one, it's just Rim and Ram that get him the suit. Emilia does not come with him to get the suit. So it is a little bit different. And then he's like, you know what? I'm fine. Go ahead and measure me. And they're like, nope, we're good. He's like, well, what is this? So he's like, today's a little bit different than last time when he goes to take the bath. And then we have, instead of them showing him, there's no sewing, so that doesn't happen. But also, we're going to add in ROSWAAL in the bath. Which, I don't know. Again, I just... Is ROSWAAL a very eccentric man that sparkles? Yes. Is there anyone for me to ship him with yet? Not really. Unless you consider Ram, but that seems more of like a power relationship and dynamic than a romantic one. So I don't know exactly if I want to go that route with it. But I don't know. Again, this scene just gave me very #no homo vibes. And I'm just kind of like, okay. It just bugs me a little bit. Because I'm like, let's not feed into stereotypes. But as part of my staff, although, this part, again, the idea is like, are you not my property as well? Because that's giving the vibes of we're establishing ROSWAAL as someone who's very controlling and views anyone within the mansion as his, regardless of who you are, which makes me a bit concerned about Emilia, because I'm like, even though Emilia, they're like, oh, well, we revere and respect Emilia because she's, the candidate to be ruler. I'm like, is he just using Emilia for her power that she could obtain if she were able to do this? I'm like, it makes me look like, okay, ROSWAAL's the villain, and I will say, this moment right here, I about died, where he just goes, like this moment here, and he goes, chomp. Where Subaru's just like, he's like the little dog that bites him in the village. He's like, well, no hesitation at all. He's like, this is turning out different from what I expected to. He's like, wasn't expecting to have this happen. Okay, life is full of things that don't go your way. And so they talk about the fact that ROSWAAL's maybe a little... I don't know if ROSWAAL's concerned that Rim and Ram are being a little too cozy around Suburu, but he talks about the two of them getting along well. And Suburu says that they insist Ram is the superior one because she's older, but it's clear that Rim is the one doing all of the work. So, and he's noticed that, and it's pretty scary. He's like, well, you have a lot of nerve as well. So when he's like, stupid ROSWAAL, I'm like, again, Suburu, this man, you're in his house. You're playing by his rules. I don't know if I'd call him stupid. And I love, like she said, cover up that sorry thing. My poor boy. Ram is just not having it. I definitely get the impression that Ram she seemed more sympathetic of him in this timeline. But over here, she's just like, I don't have time for you. Whereas Rim seems more sympathetic. So yeah, so she decides that she's going to teach him. What does she say here? She's like, I'm not going to condone disrespect towards ROSWAAL-sama. Yeah, so we established that Ram is all about ROSWAAL, which we did see in this timeline. And we established that Rim is becoming more friends with Suburu based on his potential acceptance of who she might potentially actually be. So we'll see. But anyway, she's convinced that he needs to learn about how to read and write so that he can go get groceries for her, which is hilarious. But yeah, I love that she says, he's like, why are you here? She's like, I was waiting to help ROSWAAL put on fresh clothes. The thong that is dual-sided, although the two-sided thong there, it's like the underwear that's like two-sided. I'm like, is that establishing that he's two-faced? Like he has a light side and a dark side? Is that what that's establishing? Just from there? I don't know. And so it's like, you spoil him, let him dress himself. Okay. So he's like, do you have plans after this? Please wait in your room and I'll come by later. Maybe it was the way she said it in Japanese, that whole come by later, like coming to his room. But again, this whole, I feel like he's by himself here. So in this moment when he's by himself, he's not trying to adhere to like a toxic masculine stereotype to appease anybody or save face. He's being himself here. And I'm kind of like, dude, if you really like Emilia, if you really truly like her, then these other women aren't a threat to that. Or shouldn't be. They shouldn't be a threat to that, to be quite honest. So I'm kind of like, okay. Because then like he comes in and he's like, oh, am I in heaven? And I'm like, dude, it's kind of lame, to be honest. Yeah, he's like, my heart's set on Emilia. And I was like, sir, get a hold of yourself. She just wants you to learn to read and write so you can go get her groceries. So I am curious about this fairy tale book. I wish we knew a little bit more about that. But we have the glyphs that he's learning in this. What did she say there? She said, my honesty is my most charming feature. She is honest to ROSWAAL about not suspecting him, so I don't know. So yeah, so then he tries on the suit. What's interesting is that we go to the next day, which I guess works out. So we have the next day, which I guess that makes sense. Rem had to tailor the suit throughout the day, so it wasn't just an instant thing. So we go through the next day, and we repeat some of the things that we had done while he was there, like doing the potatoes and all that. We usually accompany ROSWAAL in business, and we're working in the mansion. He asks if they have any more clothes, like if they just dress as maids all the time. And I do appreciate that kind of fourth wall breaking where he's like, well, don't you guys have other clothes than just your maid outfits? And she's like, no, because we don't need other clothes. And this eliminates the need to explain the hierarchy when we travel with him. It's a very clinical answer. It's also an answer that's kind of devoid of humanity, so it makes me curious about them, especially when we get the post-village conversation that we'll get. But these little moments are establishing the relationship between Rim and Suburu. And she said, no one would be happy to see me dress up. And I'm like, well, and he's like, I would. And he's like, I take pride in my work here. Again, I don't want to be that person. But again, on the one hand, he's just, instead of him being like, well, I would like to see you in regular clothes, that way you don't have to be, instead of it being a moment of, you guys seem like identical twins, except for the hair and eye color. He's like, you seem like you always dress up like twins, but it would be cool if you could express your individuality, and dress however you like to, and you don't have to wear a maid costume if you don't want to. You can be off the clock, like something like that. But instead he's like, a man works much better when a lady's well dressed around here, and I'm like, bleh. I'm like, gross. It's kind of like the whole, you need to smile more is the vibe it gives, and I'm like, ew. Yep, but she's like, that's none of your concern. I'm just like, ugh. So anyway, he cuts himself again with that. And then your unsightly appearance stands out, especially your hair. So he establishes that he's been cutting his own hair, and we make sure to note that Rim has this place looking like the freaking Shining. Like the tree and everything, all that. Like Rim keeps the place tip-top in shape. And they're like, well, you could cut his hair. And then he's like, having a girl mess with my hair will get me worked up. I'm like, sir, go douse yourself in some cold water, you horny teenager. Yeah. I know he's 18. I should give him some more benefit of the doubt. He's 18. But I'm also like, calm the frick down. So yeah, they established that he could, get his hair tidied up. It does bother him. Meanwhile, Betty is watching all of this go down. So we establish again the thing with the hair. I think it establishes Rim's liking of Suburu in all this. I don't anticipate this being like a harem series because Felt wasn't that into him, but I don't know. I'm curious what Betty knows. Betty seems like she might transcend time and space and know what's going on. Interesting. I want to know what Betty knows. But yeah, she's like, I could style your hair, sure. We may be colleagues, but Emilia status outranks. And she apologizes for like what she said to him earlier, which I didn't think was that bad, but she feels the need to apologize to him. It felt like a plot point to get him to have her help him go through the village and get things set up for the date, is what it seemed like. Like it was just an excuse for that to happen. But I did really like the scene where they go. I like the scene where they're both cleaning the bath together. And then they go in town. I love them scoping out the place for flowers. Like, this is awesome. And Suburu is good with kids. Them kids with them nasty snot on his shoulder. Blech. Nope, I feel for you. Nope, I would not want kids with their boogers all over me. And then the girl has the dog that has like the little bald spot, and then it bites him. Which, it caused a lot of blood. Like, that's a pretty bloody hand from that. So anyway, as they're walking back, Animals and children observe a hierarchy. They can tell if it's all right to belittle someone. He's like, gee, thanks. Also, want to make note. Again, Subaru's character gets a little clashy in this episode. Like, there are times where I'm just like, oh, my dude, that is not the right mindset to have, you 18-year-old whose brain needs to cook a little more. But then he does things like this where he's romantic and, like, he holds the groceries for a rim that I'm like, okay, good. That's being nice. That's being nice to her. That's okay. So, anyway, as they're walking along, see, like, this area right here feels like the painting, except it's like at golden hour. Ram seems like she'd handle that kind of thing well. My sister's wonderful, isn't she? I think her personality would give rise to conflict more often than not. Yeah, and Rim says the sister's self-assured nature, her honesty, makes her so charming. It's interesting to me that Ram seems to like Subaru points out that Rim is really good at everything, but then Rim believes that Ram is good at everything. So it's kind of like these two sisters are both enamored in each other. And he's like, how are your studies? And he's like, oh, I'm plugging along with those. I wish she wouldn't fall asleep on my bed in mid-session. It kills my motivation. My sister's acting that way to stimulate your motivation. I'm like, oh, do we have to? And so you're demonically inspired. And yeah, this part here where she's like demonically inspired. And look at the shadow. The little headband makes her look like she has devil horns. Bitch, I'm just saying, I think they're succubi. I think they're demons. Which would explain the whole bed thing with her. Which would explain the bed as motivation if they're succubi. That would explain that. So yeah. And she's like, do you like demons? And he's like, well, he says, gods generally don't do anything, but demons will laugh along when you talk about future plans. Basically, he's like, I'd rather laugh with the sinners than cry with the saints. Is kind of what he says. They'll laugh their heads off. And she's like, well, that's very nice. So I'm like, girl's a demon. Bitch is a demon. I'm calling it now. I'm saying these two girls are demons. ROSWAAL's probably a demon. Just saying. But yeah. And then he does the thing where he's like, ta-da, that smile's 1,000,000 volts. Oh, I can take Subaru's dad jokes. I can take him being, like, dorkily romantic. I can take that. I'll take that. But yeah. And then he's like, well, Ram and Rim didn't come, so I thought I'd come and see you. And I'm like, my dude, it's okay. She's literally wearing the same outfit she wore earlier, just with a robe over it. So yeah, so we have a fairy tale collection for kids. And that's when he's like, well, I need to make this timeline match up. So we had the whole thing with going to town. So going to town. And then we have the promise. We basically get the promise that they have. The conversation happens with Emilia over here too, where he's like, let's go on a date tomorrow. And she's like, well, didn't you just do that with Rim? He's like, I know. He's like, oh, just, you know what? We're just going to go on a date. We're going to go there in town together. And that's when she says the same thing. She's like, oh, she's like, are you sure it might cause trouble for you and for the villagers? She says the same thing again. So I'm curious about that. This time though, he says he wants to take a picture of them at the flower fields, which hope he does that. I'm curious. I want him to take photos of them throughout this journey, but it would be kind of crazy if he was taking photos the whole time of what they were doing. And even though the timeline kept resetting, the photos stayed in the phone. That would be wild. That would be insane. I don't know if that'll happen, but that would be pretty crazy. So he's like, yeah, the kids are pure innocent like angels. No, they're not. You were complaining about them a second ago. But yeah, she's like, sure, we'll go together. It'll be a day I'll never forget. Will it? Well, as soon as he said that, I'm like, bitch, is this going to make him redo the timeline? So yeah, so we go past the credits. And then he's trying not to fall asleep to get away from Fate Sama. I wonder if those freaking blue lanterns that are headache-inducing have something to do with this. I wonder if the lanterns have something to do with this. Because he starts to get really sick. He's like, I didn't say goodnight to Beatrice. Every time I saw her, all we did was insult each other. Maybe I should have at least thanked her. Oh, I don't know. Maybe Beatrice is the one that's causing all this, but I don't think so. I feel like Beatrice is a red herring. I think we're supposed to believe that she's villainous, but I don't think she is. I think she knows what's going on, maybe. Maybe she'll be a Deus Ex Machina. I don't know. But he didn't thank her, but he has had a conversation with Betty every time before things have gone down. So maybe that was supposed to happen. Maybe next time he will thank her. I don't know. But anyway, he gets really sick. They did not skimp on animating the vomit. I was like, ew, gross. And then there's this chain that he hears when he gets to the top of the stairs. He hears this sound and then gets freaking eviscerated. His arm is up on, yeah, his arm was up, got tore off, and is now on the ceiling fan. I'm like, oh. And then he gets attacked and his eyeball gets ripped out. That's terrifying. That is horrifying. Why? But why? And then we're going to be on timeline 4 or 5 at this point. Oh my God. That was gruesome. That was gruesome. That was gruesome. He just wants to go on a date with Emilia. Why is this difficult? And there was something that landed, but in the shadows, but oh, that's so creepy. Blech, blech, blech. I'm very, very curious what is going on. Like, what's Beatrice's role in all of this? What about Rim and Ram? What about ROSWAAL? I need to know what's going to happen. And we're going to be on timeline 4, restart 4 of this scenario next week. So I just want them to go on a date. Why can't we let Suburu have nice things? The message of the whole damn series, probably. But anyway, so yeah, there we go. I'm very curious to know your thoughts down below, but I hope you all enjoyed this reaction and discussion. I have so many ideas, so many questions, and I can't wait to find out what's going to happen next. So with that being said, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. I don't know if I'm going to be able to wait, but I'm going to try. And we'll see what happens next time with ReZero, Episode 4 Director's Cut. And I'll see you then.